they, them. Poetically, a person who is simply more.
Another day, another non-binary celebrity seeking attention and being cringe. We're gonna break down the latest eye-roll-inducing moment from Hollywood, plus Joe Rogan splits with Trump on a key immigration issue, woke TikTok crashes out, and so much more. All coming up on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where we take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, our politics, and our media, all from an independent perspective. Up first, like I mentioned, we've got to check in with Cynthia Erivo, the Wicked star who, honestly, I thought was really good in the movie, who just received a huge award from GLAAD, the left-wing LGBTQIA+, Two-Spirit, whatever, community activist organization that had their annual media awards a couple nights ago. Well, Cynthia, who claims she is non-binary, gave a speech, and it was honestly worse than you would expect. Take a listen to this first clip.
It isn't easy. None of it is. Waking up and choosing to be yourself, proclaiming a space belongs to you when you don't feel welcomed. Teaching people on a daily basis how to address you, and dealing with the frustration of reteaching people a word that has been in the human vocabulary since the dawn of time. They, them. Words used to describe pedantically two or more people. Poetically, a person who is simply more.
Oh, she's more, all right. More cringeworthy, more out of touch. I mean, oh no, won't somebody please think of the poor, millionaire, celebrity, non-binary? Her life must be so incredibly difficult and hard. Seriously? Seriously, you're gonna get on stage in a country where people struggle to pay their bills and talk about woe is me. People don't call me by my nonsensical pronouns. The level of out of touch, of detached from reality that you have to be, and the echo chamber you have to inhabit where this goes over and they're like, oh, she's so stunning and so brave, is all remarkable. And I'm sorry, but look, Americans are not buying non-binary. We don't accept that that's a thing. Human beings are male or female, and they can present themselves however they want, but that doesn't change that fact that with extremely rare genetic exceptions, where even then they can usually be classed as either male or female, people are all one or the other biologically, and just because you want to present differently or not be typically masculine or typically feminine, that doesn't mean you're non-binary or a third thing. And it certainly doesn't mean you're more or special or somehow superior to other people. That is giving out of control narcissism, Cynthia. And this is all the more galling to me because of the specific award she actually received. According to Wikipedia, she received the GLAAD Stephen F. Kolzak Award, which is a special GLAAD media award presented annually by the Gay Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation. It is named in honor of the Los Angeles casting director Stephen F. Kolzak, who devoted the last part of his life to fighting homophobia and AIDS phobia within the entertainment industry. The award is given to an openly LGBT member of the entertainment or media community for his or her work toward eliminating homophobia. His or her. Even Wikipedia hasn't caught up. Anyway, what makes this so funny to me is Cynthia Erivo received this award that is supposed to be about combating homophobia, but her whole shtick is actively erasing lesbians. She is a lesbian woman who is massively talented and successful, but for whatever reason, because she's bought into this ideology and its regressive sex stereotypes, she's decided that because she's not stereotypically feminine in certain ways, she has to identify as not a female and actively denies that representation and that role model to young lesbians everywhere. That's sad, not inspiring or uplifting. And I'm sorry, but reducing homophobia? I don't know if we've encountered the same celebrity, because Watching her and her out-of-touch woke politics and her constant victim script sure makes me more homophobic, not less. And I imagine a lot of Americans feel the same way. Kidding, of course. You shouldn't be homophobic just because one person grinds your gears, but I'm just not sure what exactly she's done to reduce homophobia that would justify her getting this award. Especially when her fanciful identity nonsense actively erases lesbian identity and progress and representation. But guys, I'm going to show you another clip from this that was just absolutely eye-roll inducing after this. When it comes to the debate over LGBT issues, Americans increasingly live in different realities, and our media does too. Take this recent story we talked about on the show, where a congressperson named Sarah McBride, who identifies as a transgender woman, was referred to as congressman by one of their colleagues. If you only read partisan media, whether it's on the left or on the right, you would really struggle to find out what actually happened here. But using Ground News, an amazing service that I've personally used for years and that helps me prepare this show, you can see what both sides are saying and make up your own mind. It also tells you everything you need to know about a source's bias, factuality, and ownership. Back to this particular story, well, on the left, look at CNN's headline. Out of order, hearing abruptly ends after GOP lawmaker misgenders Congresswoman. Meanwhile, over on the right, The Blaze covered the story like this. Democrat melts down after cross-dressing comrade called Mr. during House hearing. That's quite the difference. And on Ground News, you can see over 150 different headlines all describing this same story, which is a great example of why Ground News is a better way to consume the news, because everything you need to know is all in one place. What's more, using Ground News, you can get a neutral summary of the story, see how both sides are framing it, see who's covering it and who isn't, and most importantly, use your critical thinking skills to make up your own mind. I already knew media bias was bad, but using Ground News has really helped me see through it and bring you a fair and balanced show. You can get the same plan that I use, which is the Vantage subscription, if you sign up through the link on screen, ground.news/Brad, or use the QR code to get 40% off unlimited access, which comes out to just about $5 a month. This exclusive discount is available through this link, so act now to break your media bubble and keep your critical thinking skills sharp. Now, back to today's show. So this next Cynthia Erivo clip from the same event convinced me of a theory that I've had for a long time, that to a certain slice of the American public, you can say anything, no matter how vacuous or empty, in a British accent, and people will clap like you're Albert Einstein and you're just an absolute genius. That's what Cynthia did here. Take a listen.
This room is full of people who can and will if they choose, and I hope they will, because I do, to be lanterns, to light up your journey and your path on the way to showing the world who you are. We use the phrase out and proud, and though you might not have had the strength or capacity to do that now, know that I am proud of your quiet and solitary want to be just that.
So I've listened to that many times now, and I still don't think she really said anything. That entire thing was a circle loop of woke gobbledygook, but because she said it with dramatic pauses and a British accent, people think it's like somehow genius or stunning and brave and innovative. It's not. This whole shtick is cringe, and every time LGBTQ celebrities like this get up there and push nonsense, they don't help the LGBT community. They set us back. This stuff, whether it's the radical gender nonsense or the constant victim script, despite your life of incredible privilege and comfort, all of it is grating to people and played a part in the ongoing backsliding in support and the backlash against the LGBT community that we're all seeing right now. But yet they continue to congratulate themselves, give themselves awards, and act as if they're not the problem at all, and the whole world is just evil and wrong and bad, and doesn't appreciate their special brilliance and genius. I'm not buying it, but what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and do please consider hitting that like button and subscribing while you're at it. Up next, podcast superstar Joe Rogan is disagreeing with part of Trump's immigration crackdown. Let's take a listen to this really interesting clip where Joe Rogan and his guest, Konstantin Kisin, discuss a story about a gay makeup artist who was Venezuelan, who came to seek asylum in the US, but was deported to an El Salvador prison for terrorists under the Trump administration, which apparently for Joe Rogan is a bridge too far. Take a listen.
But that's also when mistakes get made.
Right.
And I think a human being being plucked out of nowhere and ending up in a country he's never been in a maximum security prison with gang members, seems like a bad thing to happen to me.
It's horrific. It's horrific.
I don't think that should be controversial.
No, that's not controversial at all. And this is the thing, measured twice, cut once.
Yeah.
This is kind of crazy that could be possible. That's horrific. And that's bad for the cause. Like, the cause is, let's get the gang members out. Everybody agrees. But let's not innocent gay hairdressers get lumped up with the gangs. And then, like, how long before that guy can get out? Can we figure out how to get him out? Is there any plan in place to alert the authorities that they've made a horrible mistake and correct it?
Well, if you think about it from a government perspective, and this is where I think it gets quite sinister, is once you've done that, the incentive structure is never going to be to admit that and deal with it. The incentive structure is to say nothing, to cover it up, to pretend it didn't happen.
But
right?
That is horrible.
So someone ends up in a black hole.
Now, I support the Trump administration's general goal and initiative to deport actual violent criminals and gang members who are here in the U.S. illegally out of the country. That's common sense. But I think Joe and Konstantin raised some serious points here, and this whole saga is a reminder to me about why due process, the right to be treated fairly in proceedings, is so important. Yet, disturbingly, some Republicans seem to be forgetting that important lesson. For example, White House advisor Stephen Miller recently tweeted, "If you illegally invaded our country, the only process you are entitled to is deportation." Republican Congresswoman Victoria Spartz said something similar.
There is no due process if you come here illegally because you violated the law. Period. You violated the law. You are not entitled to due process. Legal-minded citizens are. And these people violated laws. It is violated laws, and that's why we need to make sure we take this under control. The border has to be secure because it is life of your children. It is life of you.
Now, these takes ignore that due process is a human right and that the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution guarantees it to all persons in the United States, not just all citizens. They also ignore that we can't actually know who committed a crime or who's here legally versus illegally without due process. And for me, the story that Rogan and Konstantin mentioned is such a powerful reminder as to why due process is a non-negotiable in a free society. As the Daily Mail reports, a 31-year-old Venezuelan makeup artist, Andres Hernandez, entered the United States last year and claimed asylum, claiming he faced persecution for his criticism of the Venezuelan government and his homosexuality. Hernandez was placed in detention on very loose suspicion that he was connected to a Venezuelan gang because of his tattoos, and he waited many months for an immigration hearing on his asylum claim that was scheduled for March 13th. But he was never actually able to participate in that hearing and prove that he was a makeup artist, not a violent gang member, because he was deported right before it took place. And not back to Venezuela, his country of origin, but to a high-security prison in El Salvador intended for terrorists, the Terrorism Confinement Center. Guys, it's hard to overstate what a nightmare this prison is. As the Daily Mail reports, this is a notorious prison where inmates are subjected to extremely harsh treatment and live in overcrowded cells without basic essentials. Inmates are herded into cold, sparse cells with 80 men crammed into each, with no sheets, pillows, or even mattresses, just hard steel bed frames. They have nothing to occupy them, such as TV or books, and aren't even allowed to speak to each other. There are only 2 toilets, and lights are on around the clock. The same meal is served every day and has to be eaten by hand as utensils aren't allowed. Phone calls and visitors, even family and lawyers, are banned. inmates spend 23 and a half hours locked in their overcrowded cells with just 30 minutes to stretch, chained in the middle of the hallway. Within the cells, the temperature can reach a staggering 95 degrees during the day, and there is no other source of ventilation. Of course, if he was actually a member of this vicious Venezuelan gang, and confirmed to be so, of Tren del Aragua, then maybe condemning him to this horrible prison would be justified. But there's no reason to believe that Hernandez actually is a member. And the most minimum of respect for human rights and due process at least requires that he be given a chance to prove his innocence before being condemned to such a horrifying fate. Because after all, once they're in this prison, they almost never get out. I mean, common sense just suggests that the Trump administration has made a catastrophic error here. Look at this guy. I said this on Twitter, but this is not a gang member. This is a homosexual. And from what I've read, Venezuela in general and violent Venezuelan gangs aren't exactly gay-friendly. The only evidence, and I say that in quotes, that they have that he's actually part of this gang are his tattoos, which feature crowns and say the words mom and dad. But those don't actually prove he's a member of Tren del Aragua. Most young people in Latin America these days have tattoos. Venezuelan journalist Rana Rizquez, who wrote a book about Tren del Aragua, told The New Yorker, Tren de Aragua does not use tattoos as a form of gang identification. No Venezuelan gang does. Now, all of this could have been vetted and explored and analyzed at the immigration hearing Hernandez was supposed to get. But the Trump administration didn't wait. And instead, the Daily Mail reports, Trump made the deportations under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which he claimed allowed him to ignore due process. Now, on the contrary, due process is a human right, and it's guaranteed in the Constitution to all persons, not all citizens. Even the famous conservative Supreme Court Justice, Antonin Scalia, famously wrote that illegal aliens detained and set for deportation do have a right to due process. So simply invoking this old statute is not going to really justify Trump's actions here. Any law that gives a president the right to violate human rights and constitutional rights is itself illegitimate and unconstitutional. I mean, it's no surprise that the last time this law was invoked was during World War II, when they rounded up Japanese Americans and put them in detention centers in one of the greatest violations of civil liberties in modern American history. And anyway, even if the Alien Enemies Act's exceptions to due process were somehow legitimate or constitutional, which they aren't, nothing requires or justifies President Trump choosing to invoke that power. He doesn't have to do that, and he can just deport people through the normal process when appropriate. And of course, this story about Hernandez is just one example of many of people who are getting caught up in this system and who aren't being given a fair shake. Trump was absolutely elected with a mandate to remove criminal and violent illegal aliens from the country, especially gang members and the like. But it's really not too much to ask that he pursues that priority without trampling on human rights or condemning innocent people to hell on earth. What do you guys think? Do you agree with me and Joe Rogan, or do you stand by what Trump is doing here? Let me know in the comments. Up next, woke white women are losing it on TikTok again. Here's one hilarious example that came across my feed.
Friendly reminder, as a white American woman, I will no longer be dating white men. I'm looking for anything other than a white man, okay? Just a heads up.
I don't know how the white male community will ever recover from this tragic loss. She really thought she cooked. She really thought she just dropped the mic, hit us with the biggest own. Babe, no one cares. I'm sorry. No one cares. Date whoever you want, but please do not act like you are changing the world or being stunning and brave in your political activism by publicly announcing that you won't be dating white men. Regardless, though, it is kind of a demented way to speak or look at the world, because she's talking about this in the context of like Trump and modern politics. But to say like, oh, well, I'm going to blame an entire race and gender group for the actions of some members of it that elected Trump or what have you is actually racist and sexist. Like, if you're so upset about Trump, you could easily say, I'm only going to date men who voted for Kamala. And that's your prerogative. But to stereotype and discriminate against a whole group because of your notions about what the majority of it did, I mean, in any other context, we would call that racist and sexist. But when a woke white lady on TikTok does it, it's somehow progressive and open-minded and just, again, so stunning and so brave. Y'all, I'm getting worried about the people on TikTok. Like, they are simply not coping well at this point. And I'm genuinely getting concerned about some of them. All right, guys, I've had a long day and I'm a little bit behind today, so I'm going to leave it there for today's podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks again to Ground News for sponsoring. Please do consider hitting that like button or subscribing if you haven't yet, and we'll all talk again real soon.